As Thomas said, we're going to be talking about the job match functionality that we have available within CaseWorthy. And you can see here just some basic navigation points. You can see here kind of up across the top, this toolbar up there. You can see in the upper right-hand corner, I am logged in as a user. There's my name. Now, I am in the job match demo role. And so roles, and again, we're not going to kind of show you how we create roles or define the functionality in roles. That's for another webinar. But you can define a role, and then you define the functionality that you want to have available within that role. So I, as a user, if I just kind of scroll down here, you can see that I am mapped to multiple roles just because, you know, Thomas and I, we do a lot of demos, and so depending on the functionality that we want to show, we will get into the appropriate role. And so so we're in the job match demo role for today, and that's what we're going to be in. Now, we are a tab-driven system, so you can see we are currently in the case management tab that is highlighted there. The functionality that exists for this tab is defined over here on the left-hand side. This is what we call our navigation panel. Now, the case management tab is the tab that the majority of your users will spend the most amount of time in, because this is the tab where you're kind of tracking and recording and capturing the client data, the clients that you work with. So we will definitely be in this tab quite a bit today. We will also be in our organization tab, and then we will also be in our administration tab, which kind of shows you we've got our reports embedded in that particular tab. So the main body of this particular screen that we're looking at right now, you can see this is our client dashboard. We're in the case management tab. We're dealing with clients. So it makes sense to kind of have this dashboard show us, you know, client information. Now, these dashboards are configurable, and they're configurable by role. So for my job match role, we have decided as an organization, this is the kind of data we want to see on our client dashboard. Some basic demographic information, maybe a client photograph, finances over time, any particular documents we're storing on behalf of the client, and then we want to know if they've been barred from any programs or services, et cetera, et cetera. But you, as a user, you define the functionality that you want to see on this particular role. So again, enough of kind of the overview. We're going to start our specific presentation today by focusing on the organization tab, because that is where we're going to go, and we're going to come in and we're going to go to job orders. And so the first thing, there's really two sides of the equation as to what we're going to do today as far as kind of having CaseWorthy do an automated job match. Well, first of all, we need to know what the job is, and so that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to create an open job order within CaseWorthy, and it can either be, you know, if we have job developers on staff and they work with the employers in the community, and the employers send them their open job orders, and then your internal job developer will go ahead and set up that job in the system. That's what we're going to do right now. Or if you wanted to give that capability to the employers themselves, you can do that through our out-facing web portal. So again, you work with your employers in the community, you can give them access to this particular functionality we're going to look at right now, and then the employers themselves can go ahead and create the open job orders in your system so that you don't have to have an internal staff member create those jobs. So whatever your process is, whether you want to do it internally or you want to open it up to the employers or you want to do a combination of both, CaseWorthy will allow you to do that. So we're going to go ahead and add a job order. And you can see that we have launched just a basic workflow. Workflows are one of those areas that if you have any particular business process that requires multiple steps, then you can create a workflow. This particular process does have multiple steps, so we wanted to show you the workflow capability. You can go through all of these steps individually without having to do a workflow, but we said, hey, let's just kind of combine them all in a workflow. So first of all, we're gonna add the job itself. Then we're gonna add some job order, skills and credentials. What's needed for this particular job, and then if you wanted to put any keywords for that job, and then if you wanted to track crimes as well, to say that this particular job, if a client has this particular conviction, just rule them out immediately. They're not going to be eligible for this particular job. So again, that's what we're going to do through this particular workflow. So, as we're going to go through the workflow here, we have to identify the employer, and you've got your employer database that you've created. You've worked with your employers over time, and so you can see that, these are just some of the employers we have here in our sample database here, our demo database. And so let's say this particular job order is going to be from McDonald's in Murray, and if we had contact person associated with this particular employer, we could go ahead and bring that individual in. We could add a new one on the fly. So let's just say, the hiring manager is our contact person. The order date is today's date. The status, this is an open job order. We have one position that we want to post at this point in time, and the title is going to be cashier. And so now you can go ahead and articulate what that particular job is all about. And I've taken the liberty just to go out to Indeed and just kind of pull up a cashier position. So if you wanted to go ahead and copy and paste this in, you could certainly do that into the database itself. So let's go back, get back into CaseWorthy here. And now if we wanted to go ahead and just paste that into the database, we can say, okay, this is what our particular cashier is going to be doing. So you can go ahead and put your description in. Are you going to interview for this particular position? We'll say yes. We're also going to do a drug screen for this. The beginning date, the posting range, we're going to open it today, and let's say we're going to leave this particular posting open for a couple weeks. So let's go out to February 10th, or let's make it February 8th. And then now we're just putting some information about this particular job posting. So this is going to be a part-time position. It's going to be hourly paid. The beginning salary is going to be $9.25 an hour. Are there any benefits? If there are, you can go ahead and list that. We'll say this is without benefits. Are you going to have any holidays, etc.? And is this public transportation accessible? You can go ahead and select all those things. Now, just keep in mind that this is our form from a presentation perspective of the kinds of information that we want to capture. But if you wanted to maybe capture additional information about your open job orders, maybe you wanted to take away certain data fields, maybe you wanted to add certain data fields, that's what Thomas was talking about, kind of that 80-20 rule. We find that this form, is going to hit 80% of what our customers are looking for when they're posting open job orders. But again, if you needed something different, that's where through the implementation process, we do that discovery. We understand that we're going to configure this form for you. We're going to take off 3 data fields and maybe add 4 data fields and make this particular form 100% to your needs, not just the current 80 that it might be at this point in time. And again, that's another part, one of our webinar series where we will show you those tools. We'll walk you through those tools and just show you how easy it is to modify a form. So we're done with this first particular form within the workflow, and you can see that we have successfully completed. We've added the open job order into the system. We get the check mark there, and now we're on to the next particular step in this workflow, and it's asking us, do we have any skills and credentials that we're looking for here? And so now we're just going to go ahead and type in whatever is relevant for this particular cashier. Now, as you have across your enterprise, you may have a lot of different types of job that you place your clients into, and so you can categorize your skills and your credentials by categories if that's what you want. And so let's just say we've kind of had a category of a soft skill category, and this is where, you know, we're saying, okay, well, this particular cashier position, it needs to be a detail-oriented individual, and that's going to be a requirement for this particular job. And let's add another row, and we also want our cashiers you know, to be friendly to the public. And so let's go ahead and again, if we didn't want to look through this laundry list of the 98 different types of credentials that we have in the system, that's where the categories come in and narrow it down to just the 31 that are associated with this soft skill. And so now we can say we also want that individual to be friendly. Let's go ahead and add one more. Oh, and you can see I was going to add through this, and we'll go ahead, and it says type is a required field. And so I need to say, you know what, the friendly skill is a required requirement for this particular position. Now let's complete it and just do one more thing. And let's say we're also need some work experience for this particular position, and we want to go ahead and add work experience cashier. This is going to be a requirement as well, and we're going to say we need to have at least 12 months of work experience that is required for this cashier position at the McDonald's in Murray. And so now we've gone ahead and saved those particular skills and credentials that are associated with this particular open job order. And now, do we want to have any keywords, job order keywords? And so if we put in any keywords associated with this job, as Thomas mentioned, then you'll be able to kind of do a search in your database for show me those jobs that have this particular keyword associated to it. So let's just put in a couple keywords. And let's say, you know, a keyword for this job is detail-oriented, and let's also say another keyword for this job would be friendly. But all these keywords that you saw, the keywords, the skills, the credentials, they're all specific to what your organization is capturing. So obviously we've got this database populated with our demo data, but again, whatever your keywords happen to be, that's what we set up in the system for you so that they're your particular keywords and what you're tracking. So we've got a couple keywords. Let's go ahead and save through that. And now, are there any particular crimes that are going to make an individual just not acceptable for this particular position? Well, obviously, you know, if somebody has a theft conviction in the past, you know, that's really not going to be a good thing to have if we're looking at a cashier position here. So we're going to say that is just a showstopper. So if anyone has a theft conviction, they're just not acceptable for this particular position. And then again, whatever crimes you're interested in capturing in your database, that would be this list here. And then let's say maybe there's also a DUI down here. You know, obviously a DUI is not preferred, but it's not in the not acceptable. So you will consider someone that has a DUI, but you will not consider anyone that has a theft conviction. So let's go ahead and hit save there. And now you can see that this workflow is complete. All the steps in the workflow that we identified over here in the navigation panel have been completed. It'll show you, this summary form will show you who completed those steps and the date that they were completed on. And so we'll go ahead and say done there. And so now let's go ahead and look at our little dashboard here and see what we have available. So if at this point in time we wanted to view or edit any job orders, we could go ahead and do that. And you can see that as of today's date, so you can look at your open job orders based upon date range. And just as of today's date, you can see that we have 4 open job orders that are in the system. It looks like a couple of those were created yesterday on the 26th. They were cashier positions as well, one for Chick-fil-A, one for AutoZone. And then it looks like we have a couple open job orders from the McDonald's, where we have listed one as a cashier and one as a janitor. So these are the open job orders for this particular date. You can also do a search based upon, you want to look at open job orders based upon benefits or without benefits, you could do that. Or if you also wanted to look at any open job orders that you may have had back in time, let's say you wanted to look at, you got a request to look at the open job orders from June 1st through the end of September, and you can do a search on that, and now it will show you those open job orders at that particular date range that you asked for. So that's kind of where you can do a search on that. You can now do your search by keywords. So if you wanted to look at job candidates by keywords, and then we'll also show you the ability that you can search jobs by keywords. But if you wanted to kind of see who was already in the system that has these keywords associated with their individual skills and credentials that you set up on the client side, you can go ahead and, let's say we're looking for all those people that are maybe deadline driven or maybe detail oriented or whatever. This is a multi-select, so you can select as many as you want and then just do a search. And so now you can see that in the database, all of your clients that you have associated, these clients are detail oriented. These are those particular clients, and then if you wanted to go ahead and contact those clients, you could contact them right here from this particular form. It'll give you their email address or their phone number, whatever you have in the system for that particular client. And then if you wanted to just kind of look at a view of the job matches, of all the job matches, you could go ahead and look at this. And so again, you can bring this up, and it will just show you all of the jobs that you have in the system. And so again, this is just going to show you all the open jobs that you have. It looks like 328, and then it will tell you, you can contact the employer or you can contact the client itself. And so again, whatever information you have associated on that. So you can see this was the hiring manager at McDonald's, so if we wanted to give that individual a call, then we could certainly do that as well. So again, you can view all of your job matches that we saw there. And so for this one, it looked like James Lawrence was a job match for that open position. And so that's where, again, if we wanted to contact the employer or contact the client and take further action here, we could certainly do that. If we wanted to view this job, we could do that as well. And so this is just the job itself. So that's where, we're looking at all the job matches. But again, you can look at, if you were looking for a particular employer, then you can pull up just the employer itself and do a search on that. And now you're looking at all the job matches that you have for any open job order that you have for the employer, Southwest Airlines. These are the client names. Again, you can look at what the jobs are, and if you want to go ahead and contact the client or the employer, let them know, you can contact the employer and say, hey, Angelica Allen is a match for your job. I want to set up an interview, and then you can call Angelica, whatever your process is. So this is where, you're at kind of the overall view of looking at all the job matches in the system. So if that's how you were working, then you would have this capability here. So what we've done kind of on the setup side is we have created an open job order, and so to go along with every other open job order in the system. So that's the open job orders are in the system. So now let's go back and put on our case management hat, because now we're actually going to work with a new client that's come through our doors. And so we want to add a new client into the database. And so again, if we wanted to add this client, we could pull up any kind of a workflow and walk through the multiple steps that we have identified for whatever that client intake is. Or in our case, we just have a very simple two-step process. So all we want to do is just add a client into the database, capture some basic demographic information. Then we're going to enroll them into a program, and then we'll go start adding some information that's applicable for helping this individual get a job match with any open job order we have out in the system. So we're sitting across the desk from Josh Bush. And so we'll go ahead and type in Josh's name into the system. Josh says he has never worked with our agency before, but again, we're going to just want to go ahead and check for duplicates. Now, we can check for duplicates based upon any one of these data fields above this particular box here. And so, again, you can check on birth date or social or whatever you'd like to. So we're going to just check on both first and last name. We'll check for duplicates. You can see there are no other Josh Bushes that are in our database. So this is a new client. So let's go ahead and just put in the basic information that we want to capture for this process. And again, if this is not exactly the kind of information you want to capture when you add an individual into your database, just don't worry about that. This form could be modified to just capture the exact data that you want to capture. So we'll go ahead and add a social. We'll put a gender in that, and then citizenship status. You can see this is the head of household. Race is a multi-select field, so if you have multiple selections that make sense, you can certainly go ahead and do that. And we'll say no, and then what is the ethnicity. And so now we're going to go ahead and capture an address associated. So Josh, we're going to capture where Josh lives. And let me go ahead and capitalize that East there. And so now we'll go ahead and put in the zip code. And this runs against the federal zip code table. And we'll do that, and you can see that as soon as we put that in the system, the county, city, and state automatically default onto the form. Now we're going to say we've got a requirement here. These little asterisks next to the field, that just means they're a required field. And so we're going to say, you know what, we want to verify this address. If that's not a requirement for you, then you don't even have to have this on your form, or you can have it on your form, but it doesn't have to be a required field. We like to do this because now, once we start capturing these latitude and longitude points, then it's going to start getting us into more capability we're going to have on the reporting side. So if, on our reports, you're going to see, you're going to be able to report off of particular zip codes or by program or service of those things. But let's say you had a certain boundary that kind of crossed zip codes. Maybe it was a school district or a voting district or whatever, and you wanted to kind of draw your own boundary. And so you're going to be able to have that capability with our geospatial mapping, where you'll be able to draw your specific boundary down to the street level, so it may cross certain zip codes. And so once you do that, then we're adding that capability into our reporting, and so then you'll be able to pull up that boundary that you have drawn and defined, and then you'll be able to pull reports off of that specific boundary, because obviously it's important to you to be able to get that reporting information. So when we've gone out here, we just are connecting to the Google Maps API. We'll bring the latitude and longitude in. We've also got a connection to Bing Maps. So if this were also you wanted to kind of see where this particular address sits, you can see where it sits on a map. You get a nice little photograph of the dwelling itself, and then this is a mapping application. So if you wanted to get directions, you could get directions on where an individual might be coming to. So that is just some basic API connections that we've incorporated into the application. Do you want to be able to contact this individual by phone or by text? If that's the case, we'll say yes. So we're going to need to have a cell phone in there. And then is it okay to connect by email? Again, we'll say yes to that. And so now you just have to put in what their email address is. And so we're going to confirm that. I could retype it in, or I could just go ahead and copy and paste that. And so we're good there. All transactions in the database you can share or not share. And then if you were using scan cards to kind of record service transactions for particular clients for certain programs, then you would put the scan card ID associated with this client record, Josh Bush. So let's go ahead and save that. And so now we've added a new client into the database. It has automatically taken us to the Josh Bush client record, and so whatever data we just added in. And so now, let's say we now want to enroll this new client into our job match program. So you can see that when we pulled up our program enrollment, we come to a summary form here. The summary form is blank, just indicating that this particular client has not utilized, has not been enrolled or exited from any program. They're new to the system. So let's go ahead and enroll this client into a new program. So you can see that we've identified the family name for this particular client. What is the enrollment date? There's no exit date yet, so it's going to be open. What is the program we're going to enroll them into? This drop-down is showing a list of all the programs that you have set up in your database. So if you have 5 programs, it would show the list of 5. If you had 20, it would show the list of 20. So you can see that this is a pretty substantial list that's in our demo database. And so now we've got a nice search by type feature. So if I know I'm looking for my job match program, I can just go ahead and type in a few letters that are in the description of that program. So rather than look through that long laundry list of all the available programs that we have set up in our database, now I'm looking at a much more manageable list because I knew job was in this. And so now I want to go ahead and enroll this client into the employment job match program. This will be an enrollment just for this individual, not a family enrollment. And if I wanted to assign a case manager right now, I could certainly do that. Now, when I select this box to say that that is what I want to do, what's going to happen here is CaseWorthy is now going to present a couple different pieces of information here that are critical to saying yes to this. One is, well, you have to assign a case manager if that's what you're going to do. So if we say, yes, we want to assign a case manager, then we get the data field that's required that says, okay, who is that who is that case manager? And so you can go ahead and select from all the case managers that you have set up in your database. And now at this point, maybe you want to go ahead and send that case manager an email and just notify them that they have a new case assignment. So we have done that as well. We can use templates that when we're doing emails or doing case notes or anything like that, we can bring in a template. We can merge data from the client record into a template. So you can see this is a very simple email template. We know exactly what we're doing. We're just going to notify the new case manager. So we've migrated in or merged in the client name, the case manager name, the program name, and then the date. So you can see here that this email just says, hey, the purpose of this is to let you know that you have a new client, Josh Bush. The case assignment is on behalf of the job match program dated today's date. We can send that out, and now that's going to go out the door. It's going to go to my email, and if that's all we wanted to do, we could also schedule a follow-up if that's what we wanted to do. Schedule a follow-up for 5 days, 10 days, 15 days, whatever it happens to be. And so at that point in time, we went ahead and enrolled him into the program, and it looks like I just got delayed there we go. Okay, so now you can see we're in our enrollment summary form, whereas when we saw that before, it was blank. Now you can see that this particular client, Josh Bush, has been currently enrolled, that's the current status, into the employment job match program as of today's date. So again, this is just kind of a summary form of information. This summary form can also be configured. So if you didn't care about what the program ID or the enrollment ID or whatever, you could take those particular columns off of that. If you want to see an additional piece of information on this particular summary form, all that is available through our configuration tools that we have. So, okay, so now we have enrolled Josh into a program. So now let's come to our employment and retention dashboard, and let's just start adding some basic information about this particular client. And so now all of this can be done through a workflow. So as you just saw, we've added some demographic information. We enrolled the client into a program. And then if we wanted to do work history and skills and credentials and criminal history, we could put all those steps in a workflow and take care of all of this in one workflow. We decided we're not going to do that in a workflow, but we're just going to walk through some of those steps individually just to show you how the process is. So let's say we're still talking to Josh, and Josh has some work history, and so we want to go ahead and just put that into the database. And so now we're going to say, okay, well, Josh worked at Burger King, and again, if we have an employer contact for that, we can go ahead and bring in, the contact information associated with that. And let's say Josh worked at Burger King back in 2014, January 1st, 2014. Josh was a cashier at Burger King, and the employment type was part-time. So now we're just putting in the work history information. If you wanted to capture the SIC codes, you could certainly do that. What was the hourly salary? It was an hourly. The payment interval, was it biweekly? Was it semi-monthly, weekly? So whatever is appropriate there. The pay rate hour, let's say Josh, started off at $9 an hour and worked an average of 25 hours per week. So once I tab off of the 25 hours, you can see it'll calculate the hourly rate times the hours per week and give you a yearly total. Were there any benefits? There were no benefits. If there were, you could select that there. What was the end date? And so Josh stopped working there maybe the end of November. Let's capture that. The end wage was maybe $10 an hour. Whatever the exit, Josh was laid off for a reduction in force, and so we'll go ahead and hit save there. And so now you can see that we have added one work history into Josh's record. If we wanted to add another one, we could certainly do that. So if we wanted to add the last 5 jobs Josh had, we could do that, but that'll be good enough for our purposes. Now, once we put that in, you can see that the data will start kind of populating our employment retention dashboard. So you can see there's a work history, some pay rate information. So as you continue to add to your work history, you can have this dashboard show like the 5 most current work histories, or 10. You kind of set the parameters of what data you want to see on this dashboard. So we'll say that. Are there any keywords you want to have associated with this client? You can put those into the system. And so let's go ahead and add some keywords for this client. And let's say from this client is detail-oriented, and let's add another row and say that this client is also friendly. And so again, you're just associating whatever keywords you want to have associated with this client. So on the other side of the equation, we also had keywords associated with the open job. Now we're associating keywords on a client-by-client basis. So we'll just say save to that. And now we're going to say we also want to put in some skills and credentials for this client. So let's put in some skills and credentials. And again, whatever you are capturing on behalf of your client, you just go ahead and start capturing that information. So let's say we want to just put in a skill associated with this client, and just say we want to say this client is detail-oriented. And if you wanted to document another case note associated with that, in terms of if you wanted to kind of describe how they're detail-oriented, you could certainly do that. Let's add another row, and let's say now if we wanted to say, okay, this client is also friendly, so let's go ahead and narrow the skills down to just the soft skills. And so now we can again put in friendly here. And one last thing, let's put in some work experience, because we just added some work experience. And so now let's go ahead and make sure that's associated with the client's skills and credentials. And so as we're doing that, we're going to say this particular client has some work experience as a cashier. That started in January of 2014, and it expired on November 30th of 2015. You can see 23 months. So if that's all we wanted to do for those skills and credentials, so again, and this might be something that we just met Josh initially. This is the basic information we have put into the system. And now if we wanted to see right now, is this client, based upon the client information we just put in, is this client eligible for any jobs, any open jobs in the system? And there you can see our McDonald's is Murray, is a cashier, is available for that. It's a high level. The match level is high. If we wanted to see what the description of that job was, we can see there's the description, the compensation for that job. That's just what we put into the system. If we wanted to see what the qualifications of this job were, We could go ahead and look at that from this screen. And so this is a high job match. And so now, again, we can go ahead and contact the employer, schedule an interview, and then we could, update the client status. Rather than being open, we can say, is the client status now pending review, or is it going to be not interested, applied, etc. So as you start working with your client, you can go ahead and start, updating the status. And so now we have a high match there. But now let's go ahead and say, you know what, we found out, in working with Josh, that he wasn't completely open and honest with us initially, and maybe this might be, 3 weeks down the road. We find out that there's been some criminal history with Josh's past. Maybe we actually referred Josh to a job. That employer found out about a criminal background, and now they're updating us as so we can update our system. And so now we can say, okay, we're going to go ahead and add this into our system, and we found out that Josh was convicted of theft, and that happened back in 2011, and it happened on January 12th, and he was actually convicted of that. And now, again, if you wanted to document a case note and describe that particular incident, you could certainly do that. And now, as we say, we're convicted. CaseWorthy presents some more data fields based on the conditional logic, and we can say if there was a parole date, if there was prison. Well, Josh didn't go to prison, but what was the parole county? Maybe it was in Davis County. That was in the state of Utah. And so you can say that, and now the parole officer name is required. So again, if these aren't required fields, you don't have to make them required. So we can look to see if we have any parole officers in the database, and if we don't, now we can go ahead and just add one, add a new one now for this particular client. And so maybe this is Hurst, and it is Richard. And if we wanted to put in Richard's information, we could do that. We can save that information. And so now we put that parole officer in. And so now we have a crime associated with this particular client record now. So now if we come back and look at the job matches, you can see that where Josh was a high match before for the open position at McDonald's, the cashier spot, now Josh is not a match. And the reason he's not a match is because of the criminal history associated with that. So again, as you just work with your clients over many months or years, the information you're capturing on your clients is always changing. And so you always constantly update the information on your clients, and at any given point in time, whatever information you have on the client at that point in time, you can run it against the open job orders in the system at that point in time, and you'll see what particular job matches that particular client has. So that kind of closes the loop. We set up a job, then we set up a new client, and so now if we wanted to kind of, again, do some job searches based upon information, if we want to search into the openings, so we can search a job opening based upon a date range. And so again, if we wanted to look at any open jobs for the month of January, we can go ahead and do a search, and it'll go ahead and show us any open jobs we have in the system based upon this date range. We can do it by employer. So again, that's we're looking at open job orders. We can do job search by qualifications. So again, if this was a skill and we were looking for any open job orders that were, had detail-oriented as a requirement for that job, we could go ahead and search all those particular jobs. Get the what is the job all about? Look at what the job is. So again, so this dashboard is just allowing you to search any open jobs based upon these. So again, if you want to look at this by location, by zip code, by public accessible, by category, by date range, by employer, these are all just standard queries screens, or if you want to look at it by keywords as well, you could certainly do that. We did want to take the last 5 minutes and just kind of show you some of our reporting We're not going to be able to kind of go through and look at all the reports we have, but as Thomas mentioned, our reporting is vetted in the administration tab. We've got a lot of operational reports, so whether you're looking at clients in programs, services, goals, outcome reports, they're all just standard part of what we offer as an organization. If you select a particular report, you define the criteria that you're looking for. So even though this is a one services report, you can make many reports based off of this one kind of format, just depending on the date range you select, the organization, the programs, the services, so you can get very granular. If you're just looking for one service that was recorded over a certain month of time, you could go ahead and save that. Anything you've saved will appear in your drop-down list. So again, if you were looking for any food vouchers that were recorded for the month of October 2015, you could go ahead and just run that particular report. CaseWorthy will go ahead and look at that particular parameters for that report. It'll go ahead and bring that data set back, and it looks like it's going out looking for that data. Going to load it up into the system, and so now you can see these were the parameters that we had identified. We were only looking for one service on behalf of one program for a certain date range, and it looks like we just had one entry, and now we can go ahead. There's a blue hyperlink there. Now we can go ahead and drill on that and see that we recorded food voucher for Tom. The service date was 10/6, which fell within our date range, and the voucher was for $20. All of our standard reports have the common export. You can export this out to XML or comma delimited file, Word, Excel, PDF. These are all just comma delimited. You can also schedule a report. So again, you identify your parameters, then you can schedule this report. So if you wanted this report to run weekly, monthly, identify the members you want to schedule it to. They'll get an email when the report is created. So you can run this report Sunday at midnight. Once the report's created, it'll create a PDF. Then you can email that PDF to those particular members, and they'll be able to look at that. So when they log on bright thing Monday morning, they're going to have the report that you want them to have. So these are all just standard reports. We have a lot of standard reports. We just don't have time to go through those today. We also have compliance reports. So we have different agencies and different vertical markets that are on this particular call. So if you're a Goodwill agency, you might be interested in the annual statistics report. The ASR is a standard compliance report we carry. I think we've got some Catholic charities that are also on this webinar. So the USA is a standard compliance report. So again, depending on, we do a lot in the HMIS space. So these are all the standard reports that HUD requires. If you're a community action agency, the CSBG and the ROMA. So again, depending on the vertical market. We wanted to close this out by identifying our analytics. This is where Thomas was talking about the ability to go ahead and create just an ad hoc report. So you see we've got different analytics that we have created in the database. We create analytics all the time for certain implementations. So if there's a certain processing area that your organization is interested in, we can create an analytic, and then you'll have all those data fields that are relevant for that particular processing area, and then you'll be able to slice and dice the data. Let's just walk through this real quick on our enrollments. So let's open up our enrollment analytic, and let's say you got a request this morning from your executive director, and your executive director wants to know how many clients were enrolled in the job match program in February 2015. In addition to that, the executive director would also like to know the name and age of those particular clients. So we'll say, okay, we've got some work to do. So we've opened up our enrollment analytic, and so the first thing we need to do is identify what is the measurement we're going to measure on this particular reporting view, and we're going to want to know a distinct count of the client IDs, because that was what our ED wanted to know, how many clients were enrolled in a particular program. So we're going to say that's what we're going to look at, and now because of that, we need to get the program name. So we're going to bring that into this particular view. Our executive director was also interested in looking at the client name and the age of the client. And then we also need to know the enrollment dates. So we can say the beginning date, and then if we're interested in looking at the end date as well, and if we want to do a status, we could do a status as well, whether they're still currently enrolled in the program or whether they've exited. Our end date will give us the same information. And then we needed to kind of drill into this based upon year and month. So let's go ahead and bring in our calendar year. But I'm going to bring the calendar year up into my top box, which is going to allow me to filter, rather than this box here, which is going to present a column view of that data. So again, it's just how you want to see your information. And so now let's bring in the calendar month name, and let's also do a filter on that. And now let's say OK. So we have selected certain items in that analytic. We said we wanted to look at certain things. We dragged them over. And so now CaseWorthy is going to go ahead and load that information onto this particular summary form that sits within CaseWorthy. And so now, based upon these parameters that we have identified over here, that's the information that was just dragged into this particular summary form. So we said program name was important for us, but you know what? We don't care about all the programs that we have set up in our database. For this particular query, we're only interested in the employment job match program. So let's go ahead and just scale that down to only that program. And now you can see that over all time, right, all calendar years, all months, we have enrolled 97 distinct clients into this particular program. But our particular search is we're not looking for every year. We're only interested in 2015. So let's do a search on that. So now when we started scaling down to just a specific year, you can see our clients went from 97 to now 48. So in the year 2015, we enrolled 48 clients into the employment job match program. But now we're not interested in every month within 2015. We're only interested in February. So let's go ahead and bring that in. And now you can see we've gone down to 6. So in the month of February 2015, we enrolled 6 clients into this program. And now we can just start bringing up the next column. And now we're looking at the client name. And if we wanted to look at Scott Trimble's information or Wendy Walters, then again, we just go ahead and bring that. Now we're looking at the age. And now we're looking at the begin date. And now we're looking at if there was an end date. And you can see there was no end date here. So this status will show us that this client is currently enrolled. Now, as we went from column to column, as it presented the next column, it's just presenting us what we have identified over here. So as you change your criteria over here, that's going to change the data that you have on your summary form. If this data looks good, you can go ahead and save this view, this report. It'll be available in CaseWorthy, and then you'll be able to pull up this particular view anytime you want. You'll be able to give others permission to run this report or view this report that you have created. Maybe you'd like to see this information more in a charting. So if you want to look at this information from a pie chart view, you could go ahead and look at that in a pie chart view. We can go back to our grid view. So again, a lot of capability here with our analytics. We're very excited about the analytics. And so again, it just gives you a lot of capability to be able to kind of slice and dice the data as you would like to see fit from an ad hoc perspective. So, Thomas, I know we're a couple minutes over, so I'll turn it back to you just to see if we've had any questions throughout the process that we need to address.
Yeah, we actually had some good interactive questions from a couple of our users. First was what kind of a platform that the reports are written on, and replied to that it's on the Microsoft SSRS, which makes what you saw here so quick as far as the way they pull up. And also we had a question about the ability to pull the information from local job boards, websites, and things like that, which we can do with an API or an application platform integration bridge. It'd just be a matter of talking to those organizations to interface with them with our solution. So we certainly can do those things, or as you can obviously, we are able to enter things manually as needed. So I know we did go a little bit over, but again, thank you for everyone for being on the presentation. And what we'd like to do is leave it open for a couple more minutes here. If you have a question that you'd like to ask live here, we can if you raise your hand or pose your question within the GoToWebinar control panel, we can answer it. And like I said, if not, if you want a more personalized webinar for either your department, program, or your executive management, please do let us know when we follow up with you, and we can set up that personalized demo for you. So we'll stay on here for another minute. If there's any other questions, like I said, either raise your hand or pose your question in the GoToMeeting control panel. All right. It looks like the majority now are dropping off. So again, we appreciate your time this afternoon, and we look forward to showing you a little bit more about our software in the future. Have a great afternoon, everyone.